football fans, and welcome to The Onside Kick. Ricky Widmer here along with Dave Oster.
Good to be back.
And Mark Weber.
How's it going?
And we got a bonus podcast for you guys this time. Usually we're talking about the news that happens in the sports world, guys, but no. Fantasy football rankings, the first one for the 2013. No news for you. 2014, Dave. 13. But I don't know about you guys, even though it's the off season, I cannot wait for fantasy football. I love it too much.
For like the really, my favorite part of fantasy football is the mock draft season, where you do at least one a day, and you feel really good about it, and you overanalyze your teams. Like, oh man, what would have happened if I didn't grab that guy this time? What happens if I would have grabbed a quarterback in round 2 instead? And you just sit there and think about that for weeks. Or
are not just the mock drafts. After you draft your team, and then you're looking at it, and then you go Ruxin mode and roster bait.
You get that email from ESPN if you use them like I usually do, and you go, oh, yeah, okay. Now I understand where everybody's going to go.
Yeah.
And no, none of that.
But there's always that guy who's like, I'm going to take 5 straight running backs.
Or there's always the guy who
stashes on kickers.
Decides I'm going to take Brett Favre. Which actually, the one after he went to the NFC Championship game and blew it, a guy in one of my fantasy leagues, second overall, takes Brett Favre, and everyone just stared at him like, what the hell are you doing? Why?
Yeah, we all know who was done with that purple ankle.
Yeah.
Well, the top 200 fantasy football rankings were released this week on ESPN, and I mean, no surprise that the top 6 are all running backs, but where I want to start, kind of as a starting point with the overall rankings, I'm looking at number 9, and I see Doug Martin. And right away, I look at that name and go, really? Number 9, and he was out for most of last season?
Yeah, the muscle hamster getting a pretty big buff up there, which is interesting because you look at this Tampa Bay offense, and you got question mark at quarterback. You lost your number 2 wide receiver.
You got a defensive head coach who's not really...
But what does Lovie Smith like to do?
He likes to hand the ball.
Yeah.
Hand the ball off. Yeah, definitely. So things could be favorable for Doug Martin.
And to be fair for Doug Martin, like, just last year, he was projected way up. I think he was like probably the fourth running back.
Hey, and in those first 3 games, double digit, and then a little less production, and then boom, didn't play from 8 until 17. And this is the thing, I know that the first thing everyone out there is going to think about, they're going to be like, Ricky, you should know this. Adrian Peterson had a pretty good injury, and look at what he did coming off an injury.
Yeah, well, Adrian Peterson's a freak of nature.
I don't see Doug Martin doing that.
And you know who had an injury and did not come back very well? Your favorite quarterback, RG3. So
my favorite quarterback? You mean the kneeless wonder?
You doing the stanky leg out there.
So I mean, there's perfect examples of a guy coming back being incredible, a guy coming back and, oh, what is going on out here? So, I mean, for a guy like Doug Martin, if I'm number 9 overall and he's right there, I might just pass up on him. You know, I might take the first wide receiver because I'm not going to take a tight end in the first round.
Well, and I mean, another thing I'm looking at in these rankings is something that happened this week when LaShawn McCoy, he was on ESPN, basically said that he's the best running back in the league. And then if you look at these rankings, AP, he was like, no, I'm the best. And then it's AP McCoy in these rankings.
Well, you got to look at this. Adrian Peterson is about the only constant in the entire Minnesota team. He's the only guarantee. He's the only guy who's been out there doing his craft. LaShawn McCoy, though, I mean, he's just straight talented. He's so quick, elusive, gets out of the backfield. He can catch the ball, great hands, and just matchup issues.
And what he was able to do in Chip Kelly's new system.
Oh, man, the numbers are absolutely ridiculous. So I'm even questioning that. I think McCoy would be number 1 in my mock.
Let me put it this way. 3-part question. If you had the number 1 pick and you weren't going to go consensus of AP at number 1, you would choose one back between AP, McCoy, and I'm even going to throw Jamal Charles in there.
See,
who you going with?
I don't like Charles. I think that his production is going to tank this year. I know this guy's been absolutely monster season, but it depends if you think Casey's going to live it up again this year, and I just don't. So I'm definitely taking McCoy.
The reason why I'm going to go AP because I'm going to just say it. Vikings
that's not the
bias.
question.
You just said if you don't go him.
You can't pick him. That was the wrong question.
No, but he's a choice. If you're not going to for sure.
Then that's not the question.
Fine, then I'll go McCoy because the point I was going to get at is Jamal Charles.
Get that Viking attitude out of here.
The only game I remember is the game against Oakland where he had 51 fantasy points, but he only had 20 rushing yards. He did it all in the passing game.
Now, I will say this, though, about this question. The one time, one of my leagues that's been consistent, because I do quite a few leagues, but this is the one that I've done every year for a long time. This one, I've gotten the first overall pick every single time. We pick it out of it. Every single time I've taken Adrian Peterson. One time I did not take Adrian Peterson. And I only won, I think, 3 or 4 games.
Ouch.
And you know who I picked in that one? I betrayed my city and picked Aaron Rodgers. I bought in on the... That was the year where everyone was saying...
You never go...
You do the quarterback right off the bat.
This is me. I feel like you don't go quarterback. Don't go quarterback in the first round because, I mean, you could pick up, especially this year, a guy like Johnny Manziel. I'll even throw Teddy Bridgewater out. The rookies that are going to start...
12.
Yeah, you can pick them up and start them, but it's not... It's going to be good if you can get 2 back-to-back backs.
Some veteran that, will start week 1 because it's going to take a little bit for some of these guys.
I'm just saying, you don't need... It would be better to have 2 bomb backs instead of 1 bomb quarterback.
My lesson that I learned from that from that year was just, I'm not touching quarterbacks. Well, my thing was I always used to take Eli Manning. Always regretted taking Eli Manning.
Yeah, that's full of regrets.
Because he's always there, and then it's just...
Mark, you kind of remind me of last year. All 3 of us were in a league together. And, of course, I had the second pick, went Arian Foster. That didn't work out that well. But I went running back. There's always a guy in our league that if Drew Brees or Peyton Manning's on the board, he goes round 1. And I'm like, you don't do that. You go running back, especially if you're not going to go back like I do. At least go running back with that first-round pick.
I mean, it is hard when you get past, Peterson, McCoy, Forte, Lynch, Charles. You're sitting there and it's like, okay, should I go with the best wide receiver and just get the best wide receiver? Should I go with the best quarterback and just have the best quarterback?
Unless his name is Megatron, no.
I think that's a little arguable.
In the first round, and I'm talking...
Oh, if you're on first round...
Let's actually, for this conversation, in the first round, what kind of league are we talking about? We talking 12-man league, 16-man league, 10-man league?
The perfect number in my eyes is always 12.
12. So in a 12-man league, that, to me, in that league, half of the first round is going to be running backs.
Without a doubt. But if I'm sitting there at like 6 or 7, I got a real thought here of, I think I should take a wide receiver.
See, I don't know, because let's just, for the sake of argument, if you're sitting 6 in your 12-man league, we're going to say just write down these rankings. Peterson, McCoy, Charles, Forte, Lynch, all gone. Now you have to pick Eddie Lacy, Calvin Johnson. I'd go Eddie Lacy.
I'm taking Calvin Johnson. I do not.
And I would go Peyton Manning.
You would go quarterback?
I would take it. If you take the first 5 off the board, and my options were Lacy, Johnson, or Manning, I would lean Manning. I'll be honest with you.
I think for this, I don't trust the rookie.
Or wait, let me throw this out there. He is ranked 11th overall, 8th for the running backs because of last season. Do you think Arian Foster, because of what he can do, should he be before Eddie Lacy?
That's rough.
Possibly, but I'm nervous about a Bill O'Brien system because I don't know what it is.
True, it's going to be a different system.
But at the same time, I'm nervous about Eddie Lacy because is there going to be a sophomore slump? What's going on?
Let me also
have a year
so
of
Foster
tape
coming off the injury versus Eddie Lacy in his second year. I don't know. I'm going to be a gambler on that one. I'll go Foster.
I'm going to throw out and I'm going to pull at your guys' Bears bias. Mm-hmm. Is Brandon Marshall on the same level? Because of last season, new contract, would you feel like, okay, Calvin's on the board, but I'm going to go with my boy Brandon Marshall?
I wouldn't. I think Calvin Johnson's the target in Detroit and is just overwhelmingly so over every other target
but you
there.
But you got to think, new head coach.
It doesn't matter. You still got Matt Stafford.
True.
As long as that arm is still attached to his body, he's going to throw the ball up for Megatron.
Yeah.
Brandon Marshall is in a absolutely loaded system. He's got his best buddy Alshon Jeffrey across from
new Bennett. Tall wide receiver Marquise Wilson out there,
and you got Bennett at and Forte in the backfield. I just think there's too many options. I think the Lions do have options, but it still seems like Stafford overwhelmingly targets Megatron. So I think just production wise, he'll be better.
Well, always get nervous. We remember the curse of CK2K. New contract, get nervous.
But I mean, the one thing I'm kind of thinking about going back to our original of drafting running backs in the first round. Another thing I'm thinking about, Calvin Johnson, Peyton Manning, maybe even a Jimmy Graham. Those are like the other running back position guys that
non-running back
that could go in the first round.
Right.
And I'm thinking though, besides that, you've got Alshon Jeffrey, you got Brandon Marshall, you have AJ Green, Demaryius Thomas. These are guys that aren't running backs that I feel confident that if I'm a late second round guy or even an early third, that if I'm an early third, I can go running back, and still get a good wide receiver at the 3.
Well, see.
Go ahead, Dave.
No, I was just going to say, I think I would, my strategy right now, the way I'm looking at it is I'd be happy going in if I do drop in that middle to late of the first round, I'd be happy going with a Peyton Manning, grabbing him, and then going for a couple of second-tier running backs like a Le'Veon Bell, like a Gio Bernard, like maybe even C.J. Spiller. I mean, there's some depth there. I know it doesn't keep up to the top tier, but I'd feel better getting 3 second-tier running backs and the stud at quarterback, personally.
And, of course, the thing you got to remember with the running backs is, you mentioned Bernard, even Eddie Lacy, things like this. Zach Stacy as well. How many of these guys did you really think, last year, that's going to be the guy? That's going to be one of the big guys.
I nailed both of those picks last year.
Dave has it. Besides that, not very much.
I say preseason, those were the 2 guys who I came out and went, Le'Veon Bell's going to be your starter.
You said
Gio Bernard is going to be the starter.
I was going to say with Stacy in the league that we were in, I was able to pick him up and got him for a few good weeks before I traded him.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, this
has always been a breakout talent.
Idea of fantasy football. You should be able to. I mean, if you're in a good position, take those running backs first pick, second pick. But if not, get your good quarterback, get a really good quarterback, get a really good couple of wide receivers maybe, and stack up on your running backs later because at least 1 or 2 of them is going to be pretty good.
That's your spot to gamble. That I feel that's the safest spot. You can go ahead because there's going to be backs who go down. There's going to be split systems where you're going to be like, oh, I thought he was getting more carries than this, or he's getting goal line sniped. So you always want to keep options available to you at that point. I feel quarterback, you're guaranteed. Wide receiver, you know who the number 1 in each system is right off the bat, so you're pretty satisfied with that. So that's the big question mark is running backs, you got to have a stockpile and absolutely load up the bench with too.
Well, I mean, there's no doubt, and I think that you guys would agree with me, especially if you're, and we're using our 12-man default for the rest of this podcast, if you're 1 through 5 at the least, you're going to go with one of those top 5 running backs.
Most likely, yeah.
There's no question. But now to kind of get away from, because it feels like to me, when we talk about news, it's all about the quarterback. When we talk about fantasy football, it's all about the running back. One guy in particular that I want to talk about fantasy-wise, Julio Jones. 21st overall in the top 200, 6 wide receiver coming off of an injury. Should fantasy football guys, be afraid to draft him because of, like we talked about with Doug Martin, last year's injury?
I don't think so. I think Julio Jones is an absolute stud regardless, and I think he's going to be healthy. He had that injury pretty early on in the season. If you remember, he was out from week 5 on. So plenty of time to recover, get back in shape. I think Matt Ryan absolutely going to have a fantastic year. He's at least going for 4,500 yards.
And he's going to be excited to have his guy back there. It's the same, offense essentially that's out there. If anything, it just gets better because Steven Jackson had a little bit of time to,
I don't think he can be possibly worse.
To do.
I don't think Steven Jackson can be worse than he was.
I'm supposed to go that way with the football. But, it's got to get better, and especially with having a guy like Julio Jones. Matty Ice needs somebody to throw to. And he didn't have anything for a while because of injuries, so I think he's going to be excited. He's going to throw the ball a lot, and they're going to try and bounce back and take the spot back from Carolina.
Well, and the one thing I'm thinking about with it is because I actually had Julio Jones last year, and I hope that he does better this year because I'm thinking as a fantasy owner, I would like to draft him again. It's one of those things, but some of the things I'm thinking about, especially with the wide receiver, is last season, a guy like Alshon Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Not many people, he either went drafted late or undrafted in fantasy football. And I remember in our league, I got him for dirt cheap. I basically gave up James Starks and Kyle Rudolph for Alshon Jeffrey and Roddy White and basically got a steal at the end of the year. That's not going to be the same this year. Jeffrey,
he's going to be taken
I'm
early.
going to say it this, first or second rounder. Maybe even a third.
No, I think third round.
You don't think?
Maybe second.
We're at a little bit of a bias because here in Chicago,
we're
going to have people that are jumping on him right away. But I think people are just going to think back to Alshon. Oh, that's the guy who makes those crazy catches all the time. You know what? I saw him on the Sports Center top 10 a lot. I'm going to take him. I think you get a lot of people who are just going to say, I remember that he makes free catches, and they will almost even forget about Brandon Marshall.
I'm going to throw this out there.
Jeffrey.
You guys agree or disagree with me. Here's my top 5. I'm going to go different than what ESPN has for their 80
Overall
wide receivers. Just wide receivers. Here's my top 5. Calvin Johnson, number 1, no doubt. A.J. Green at number 2. Brandon Marshall, Julio Jones, Alshon.
Really? No love for Demaryius.
I don't like Demaryius, and I'm not a huge fan of Dez.
I'm the other way around. I think A.J. Green's going to slide.
So you would switch Green and Demaryius?
Yeah, I'm keeping with the standard of Calvin Johnson, Demaryius.
Well, Calvin Johnson to the wide receivers is like AP to the running backs.
Yeah, I still have Demaryius as the number 2. I think Dez Bryant, A.J. Green, Brandon Marshall are all very good. They're all going to be within a couple points of each other. Mm-hmm. So I just don't think Andy Dalton is going to... Oh, he has great regular seasons, then disappointing postseason, so I have such mixed feelings.
I just think the thing about and I'm kind of agreeing with you on this one a little bit, is just, first of all, the downfall has to be starting for Andy Dalton. It has to be, because we're all aware of what the situation is. People are going to be talking about it all throughout, preseason.
AJ's on the bench, and by AJ I mean AJ McCarron.
Yeah. I mean, people are going to be talking about how this has to be the time for him to prove it, and whether that boosts him up and gives him a little push, or it just kind of makes fantasy owners be kind of scared of, I better avoid AJ Green because his quarterback's going to be out and they're going to have a rookie.
Yeah.
But the thing I will say is actually Dez Bryant. I'm bumping him out of my top 5.
Out.
I'm bumping him out because, once again, we just have no clue what's going on for, Dallas's team. It just continues and continues and continues. And how long can basically this offense, which is just Dez Bryant and just Tony Romo, how long can they...
Well, you got DeMarco Murray. If he stays healthy.
Yeah, I mean, not really.
Witten is
the safety blanket.
Yeah. You basically have these guys here, and it's just, they just throw it to each other, and that's what basically gets Dez Bryant up. I always do not believe in the Dallas Cowboys, and I am believing that we are going to see a big fall that's going to have a huge shakeup very soon for Dallas. That's why I got to bump Dez out. I got to put Julio up.
I was going to say, actually, after looking at this, and I would make Julio probably number 3.
Really? Over Brandon?
Yeah.
The Bears fan going to put Julio over Marshall.
It's simple numbers at that point. Look at the targets per game. Look at the catches and the yards.
And
across the board, Julio beats him.
Well, the biggest thing that I think of is just situation with the team. Brandon Marshall I'm talking about, now has a wide receiver on the other side of the field that Jay can throw to, Alshon Jeffrey. Last season with Julio, before he went down, Roddy White was injured for most of the season. So there's no question, Matt Ryan, he's going to Julio. It depends if Roddy White's going to be a little bit healthier and he can kind of take that, okay, well, Matt's now got 2 targets like Jay has.
See, I just think it's the fact that the Falcons are still going to be playing from behind, so they're going to air the ball out a lot.
And you got to think they don't have Gonzo anymore.
Yeah, that's a huge loss.
But the three names I'm thinking about still sticking with the wide receivers. I'm just going to bring up these names. You guys say whatever you feel about them. We have Deshaun Jackson, 15th overall in the wide receiver category, new team in Washington, and 2 guys I'm looking at to possibly be better than last season, Percy Harvin, 20th, and Michael Crabtree, 21st.
Percy Harvin, I'm still willing to bet he won't play. When it comes to Deshaun Jackson, if RG3 is back to shape, I think he's going to be one of the biggest surprises of the fantasy football season. I'm actually really excited to see that. I think it could be something great. He needs a good quarterback out there who's not still hurt.
I say RG3 can throw the deep ball, and absolutely Deshaun Jackson, that seems like a perfect matchup for him. So I like the pick, but you have to count on RG3 being the quarterback he was his rookie year. I mean, that's asking a lot. He came out, had a really great performance, and just completely tipped off. I think Percy Harvin, I mean, he had the one amazing game, and that's all that mattered for Seattle. I don't know his regular season. I don't know how much time he's going to miss. I would shy away from him. Crabtree, I think when healthy, is the number one wide receiver and just amazing for the San Francisco team. I think I would go him over both of them, yeah.
Question. Wide receiver for both the Washington Redskins. Who, if you had to pick, fantasy-wise, to have one of these guys on your team, who are you picking? Pierre Garçon, Deshaun Jackson?
It's a tough one. It really is. Pierre Garçon's always kind of that guy you take late because he's there and you can count on him for some points basically in your bye weeks or in a flex spot. But Deshaun Jackson, I think there's some gamble to it because we don't know for sure that he will just be able to pick up a new system and just be great. And we don't know that RG3 and him are even going to get along.
Deshaun Jackson can run straight go routes and just be fine. I mean, just go.
I mean, if he had Sexy Rexy out there like the good old days, yeah, that would work
deep,
great.
Yeah.
But I think...
Unleash the dragon.
Mentally, I'm just not sure about Deshaun Jackson because he alienated so many people over the Eagles locker room. All he's got to do is get on RG3's bad side, and all of a sudden, Pierre Garçon's going to get all the balls. I would probably take the risk, but I would be nervous about it.
What are you thinking, Dave? Deshaun or Garçon?
Garçon's going to be the steady Eddie. I think Deshaun will have a couple standout performances.
The steady Eddie. I actually like that little analogy there.
But absolutely. I mean, that's the one thing that I'm like, if you want to take a risk, go Deshaun. Garçon's going to get you points week in, week out.
Well, and another thing I'm looking at that you have to think about, especially fantasy football, is the bye weeks. And there are some wide receivers just in, let's say, the top 25 that have similar bye weeks. Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones, Brandon Marshall, all week 9. And then if you look later down, both the Washington wide receivers, Keenan Allen, who did good last year, T.Y. Hilton, another one, Dave, I know you like him, all on the same bye week. So I'm going to focus this in on the top guys. Calvin and Brandon Marshall. To me, those are ideally, if I want to have the best wide receivers, those are the two I'm going with.
They have the same bye week.
But do you draft them because
go for it.
They have the same bye week?
Who cares? Suck on week 9. Lose one game.
Nuh-uh, you go undefeated, baby.
No.
That attitude.
You're not going undefeated in fantasy football. If one of your players is going to fuck
actually had
up.
a guy do it last year. It was actually pretty odd.
It was a string of luck.
Sucked.
But I mean, this is the thing. When it comes to fantasy football, there's two extremes. Not have any matched up bye weeks or go for it, just cram everything into 1 or 2 weeks.
The one disclaimer I forgot to tell the listeners is anyone that Dave says he's drafting, don't draft him because I'll get injured.
That's true.
Yeah.
Dave did good last time, though.
But I mean, Dave, what about you? Because these guys, I'm just going to say Johnson, Marshall, Julio Jones. Would you draft any of those two together because of the same bye?
Absolutely. I think there's always somebody who's going to go down, and there's always going to be somebody who's going to have a breakout year. Last year, Keenan Allen came out of nowhere. Jeffrey came out of nowhere. I mean, there's going to be these guys who take themselves up to the next level, and they're going to be available late in the draft. They're going to be available after, like, week 2, you can pick somebody up. I mean, there's always room later. If you can get 2 stud wide receivers just because they match up on their bye weeks, it's okay to have a down week and fill somebody else in.
Okay, now to move from the wide receiver. I want to just get this position out of the way because it's a position for years that's been like, you get Gronk, you get Graham, who else are you going to take? The tight end position. And this year, you got Graham and Gronk. Julius Thomas had a good year last year. Jordan Cameron, okay. I'm going to throw out one name. And, of course, the Chicago bias is going to come in. If I can't get Graham or Gronk, I'm going with Martellus Bennett late.
I mean, I guess that's an option.
I'd rather stack up on wide receivers and running backs and then take him late. And he'll be my tight end.
I always shoot for one guy at the tight end position, and that's Greg Olsen. I know there's some Chicago bias there.
There's not a single wide receiver on that team right now.
I mean, I'm gonna say something about Carolina later on, and we'll get to it. But
okay.
When it comes to Greg Olsen, you can rely on him. He is athletic, not Gronkowski, but he's athletic. And when it comes to the red zone, who else are you going to throw to?
True.
I'm totally fine with grabbing the number 4, Vernon Davis.
I mean, with tight ends, I'm just going to say the top 5 that they have here. Graham, Thomas, Gronk, Davis, and Witten. You're going to love to have those 5 guys, but let's say you don't get one of them. Which guy do you go with? To me, it's Bennett. Mark, you said Greg Olsen.
That's right. Well, I mean, they just lost Steve Smith as well, so that's a big loss.
There's literally no one to throw it to. I'm waiting for Cam Newton to throw the ball vertical about 60 feet and then stand.
grab it.
Yeah, he'll just run downfield for himself.
I mean, just looking at some of your other options, Antonio Gates always is an option. We are still kind of waiting for Kobe Fleener to become a solid option. The thing about tight ends, though, I think you either have to go in the mindset of, I need to grab one of the good guys, or you go into the mindset of, you know what, who cares?
I'll take a flyer on it. I would say if anybody out of a rookie, I mean, Eric Ebron, physically gifted guy, super immature, but physically gifted. He is a wide receiver in the body of a tight end as much as Jimmy Graham is. And that's why I'm like, yeah, if anybody's going to pull out stupid stats, it's him. Because like I was saying, right now it's Megatron up there. That's what they got. So if you put Ebron up there, right next to him, another gigantic target for the end zone, I think he's going to get a lot of catches. And again, there's nobody like him physically to compare to other than Jimmy Graham.
And one name I'm going to throw out here just because I think he's overranked on their top 30 of the tight ends. Number 10, Jordan Reed. Because, of course, he had a great game against the Bears last season, 19 fantasy points. I pick him up, and then he turns to crap. He had one more good game against an NFC North team in the Vikings, and then crap.
I'll give one thing I want to mention in the tight end spot, Zach Ertz. He had a little bit of time to learn. He should hopefully have that system figured out right now. I think we can actually expect some pretty good things out of him in the Chip Kelly system now.
Ricky, are you liking your hometown boy of Kyle Rudolph? Do you think he comes? No.
The reason why is because you say you like Greg Olsen because Carolina has no one to throw to.
Yep.
Well, if Teddy Bridgewater is going to start, because that's who I think is going to start, he's got to run the ball with AP. He's got Greg Jennings, Cordell Patterson. We've got options other than Kyle Rudolph, and Kyle Rudolph hasn't been the C word. He hasn't been consistent.
Adrian Peterson's on the team. You don't need to throw the ball.
Yeah, you could just run it.
Yeah, every single down.
I bring up Teddy Bridgewater. We're going to get to the one position that we've lacked in this fantasy football podcast, the quarterback. Of course, you want the Peyton Mannings, the Drew Brees, the Aaron Rodgers. Let's say you get none of the top 5. We're going to keep on that kind of motif for this. Who do you want out of the top 5?
And let's mention, for those of you listening who don't have it on you, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Stafford, and then Cam Newton. Those are your top 5. After that, obviously you got to go with future Hall of Famer Nick Foles.
I was just going to say, I'd say greatest of all time, Nick Foles.
He is the GOAT.
Some would say that he's better than Peyton Manning.
No, some would say he's equal to Peyton Manning.
At least equal, possibly better.
Greater, for the math guys out there, greater than or equal to Peyton Manning?
I want to say, for me, guys I shoot for, Jay Cutler, obviously. I mean, there is pure Chicago bias in my Jay Cutler.
See, I wouldn't. I can't jinx myself like that. I wouldn't draft him. B, no.
See, I don't know. I'm looking at the top 3 guys. Let's say I went running back. Top 5 quarterbacks are off the board. The 3 quarterbacks I'm putting on my big board in my war room for fantasy football. Andrew Luck, of course. Colin Kaepernick, of course. And then, I don't know. I stay away from Cutler. I think Brady would be my 3. I'm kind of offended that Brady's 12 on these quarterback rankings.
Well, he doesn't have ridiculous amounts of production.
He doesn't have Randy Moss anymore to throw it to.
Yeah, that was quite some time ago, unfortunately. But, he does well with Gronk and Edelman. I mean, he's got some way to move the ball, and it's going to be through him. They have a stable of backs. But I think it's a bit low for him, probably. Personally, I would go Foles.
I thought you'd have to have Brady in the top 10 at least, right?
Probably.
Over Matt Ryan is right.
No,
that is a diss.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying I would take Foles and then Kaepernick, then Ryan. Those would be my 3.
I think Matt Ryan's only low because he had nobody to throw to last year.
But having Matt Ryan one above Brady, that's a diss to Brady. Brady should be above Matt Ryan.
He's got better wide receivers.
Tom
Brady only has guys out there that are even name recognizable of just kind of like, oh, yeah, Edelman, I've heard him before.
You could put on Ricky, you could put on a Julian Edelman jersey, and people would be like, oh, shit, is that Julian Edelman?
Yeah. After Wes Welker went. But I mean,
he was short.
One of the guys I'm looking at, and this is because I assume that he's going to start in Tampa, do you think that people should go out there, I'm talking late if he's still available, and say, you know what, I already have my quarterback to be my starter. I'm going to draft Josh McCown in case he becomes good.
And I will take this moment to say, make sure you listen to the actual, because this is a bonus episode, make sure you listen to the actual Onside Kick podcast to hear our young quarterback stardom sit-ems. But I believe that, as I said in the other podcast, I believe Josh McCown is going to be the starter. There's no reason not to be the starter if you're Josh McCown. They paid him starter money. He will be starting. Is he fantasy football draftable? Hell no. Stay away from him. Maybe as a backup.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Your backup fantasy quarterback.
I'm sorry, as a backup.
I'm not even excited about that.
There's better options than McCown as a backup.
I would take
Carson Palmer.
Well, not even
this
just
is a guy
that.
in a non-sexy town.
A non-sexy town.
It really is. He's third string.
Some would say that they have
conference.
the number one shutdown corner. Yeah. Some would say.
Some say. But that's what they're talking about, defensive side. And this is a quarterback who slings the ball. He's got Fitzgerald out there, Michael Floyd. I mean, this is a team that can absolutely throw the ball around with everybody. I mean, it's just a shame that they're in that division.
No,
that's really the only thing against them.
I will say, this are some of my guys who are very low that I think might surprise people. E.J. Manuel being the first one.
I was actually going to say something, and you just provoked it. My 3 quarterbacks for fantasy football, my top 3, stay away from them this season. E.J. Manuel is in that top 3.
Why? There's no reason. I mean, he's back from injury.
I do not think that the Bills are going to do anything. I'd stay away from him. I'd stay away from Eli Manning, and I'd stay away from Andy Dalton. They're my top 3. Don't draft them.
I will say one thing. I also want to ask the question with Phillip Rivers. Do we believe he truly is back, or was last year
He's a backup. To me, he's I already have my starter. I need a fantasy backup.
Because before,
I think
Phillip Rivers was always that guy who you waited for. Because you knew he would be around and you knew he would get you some points.
Yeah, I think he's still a serviceable number 2 or a late 1, definitely.
See, I don't know. I think that unless you're, like you mentioned earlier in this podcast, because we live in Chicago, we have to deal with the Chicago fans being more hypeable for the Chicago players. But I think in most leagues, Jay Cutler is what you just described Phillip Rivers as. I'm just going to wait and get Jay Cutler instead of going with a top quarterback.
I wouldn't. Cutler hasn't played a full season in like 4 years. Why would you pick up that as your starting quarterback?
But when he does, because
when he does,
well, because you can
need
pick
a quarterback for more than 8 games a year.
You can take Jay Cutler as your starter, and then I can take later Manziel, Bridgewater, any of the starters that are gonna, and be like, okay, if he does get injured, I'd rather play them.
I think the answer to Dave's question, always in my eyes, is the thing out of Jay Cutler is you're gonna get. You'll get probably a 4-touchdown game. You'll get quite a few 3-touchdown games, and then there'll be some games where he doesn't play because he's hurt.
I would
need
take
him
that
to be handcuffed to someone.
I would take that injury risk though with Jay Cutler.
So you're gonna what? Hope Cutler stays healthy for the first 5 games, so then maybe Manziel's playing in a starter and actually producing.
I think you listen to the
producing.
other. No. Listen to the other podcast though. I think Manziel starts week 1. There's no doubt about it.
I don't care if he starts week 1. I'm saying actually produces.
Oh, I think he will. He'll produce. So will Teddy Bridgewater. I'm not saying like amazing, like 35-point fantasy performances, but enough to be like, okay, I can start them.
And I will say one thing. I think everybody, if you're smart, later round, you think which one of these quarterbacks these young quarterbacks, if someone hasn't grabbed one of them already, just grab one and stash him.
Well, I mean,
stash him for later on. Or, I mean, you can wait till like week 3, week 4, but just grab like Bridgewater or Bortles and just stash them just in case.
Well, and I mean, Blake Bortles, out of all the 3 rookies of Manziel, Bortles, and Bridgewater, he's the one that you do that with because Jacksonville, out of all of these teams with rookie quarterbacks, they're the only ones that have said he's going to sit, he's going to learn the pro style, we have a starter. I say, even if you have 2 quarterbacks and you're like, screw it, I just need someone to take in the very last round, take Bortles and stash him. Because I feel like he'll play later in the season when Jacksonville blows.
Yeah, but do you really want to have your late season hopes on maybe Bortles being good? Nah.
Well,
you're talking about around like 16.
Yeah, how many roster spots are actually there?
I would not.
There was one year
him.
My team was so stacked I needed a guy. I drafted Brett Favre.
I would not.
He wasn't even in the league anymore.
I wouldn't do it. I think there's definitely deeper talent at running back and wide receiver that could pay off much larger than having. Maybe a quarterback who plays during a special bye week.
Well, what's exciting, though, about one of these young guys is when you get to those injury times. Everybody needs somebody. Someone's quarterback is hurt week 12.
Well, let me put it this way.
And Bridgewater's going to start all of a sudden. You go, hey, ride the hype train. I'll trade him to you for your backup running back.
Or that, but let me throw it out this way because you mentioned injury. Let's say, for the sake of argument, Michael Vick is going to be. Let's say he's named the starter in New York.
He himself says he's a backup.
Do you draft him? Let's say, for the sake of argument, he's the starter. Do you draft him knowing his injury
I would
problems?
only draft him if he was the backup.
I would draft him for for those 3 weeks that he's going to play. Sure, why not?
Or do you then say, hey, I'm going to stay away from Vick. I'll take Geno Smith because then when Vick gets injured, Smith will start, or the trade him like you said.
You just stay away from Geno Smith
altogether.
Yeah, there's nothing there.
That's why I said.
What about Ryan
Smith
Fitzpatrick in Houston?
No, he throws interceptions like it's his job because it
even
is
as a backup because that's his job. Yeah. Let's move.
Well, how about the All-American though, guys? I think we're
Kirk Cousins.
somebody.
I think first overall.
Cousins.
He's a first overall pick right there.
Corn-fed American right there.
But defenses now. The top 5 defenses for ESPN.
Saving the best for last, I see.
Seahawks, Panthers, 49ers, Broncos, Cardinals.
These are absolutely no thought required. I'm surprised a little bit that the Broncos are higher than the Cardinals, but maybe that's just due to competition scheduling this year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to reorder this a little bit in my eyes.
Okay.
Seattle, of course, is number 1. San Francisco's probably number 2.
Yeah.
Arizona's number 3.
St.
Denver's
Louis?
probably number 4. I was going to say St. Louis is probably number 5.
Between sack numbers and picks.
I got to bounce the Carolina Panthers out of this spot.
Really?
I do. I think that their division's getting better. They had the advantage of a really weak division last year, and this defense hasn't gotten better in the offseason. So I think
name your top 5 again.
It's Seattle, it's San Francisco, it's probably Arizona, then Denver. I think I switched those around, but those two are kind of mixable. It's going to be St. Louis.
Let me put this into consideration. You just said them. I don't know where I'd put them in my top 5. Maybe it'd be 5, but because of the draft they had, St. Louis I could see as a top 5 fantasy defense.
Yeah, they're my number 5, mainly just because they're going to get a million sacks, and they'll probably force some
would you want to go up against that
and
defensive line?
I mean, the amount of fumbles they could cause is ridiculous.
That's true too. Especially, you got to know your own league. If you're in a league where this is something great, and I'm top.
And for this next question, I'm going to use the league that all 3 of us were in last season as our kind of just
baseline
for it. What round, the earliest round, are you guys taking a defense?
I don't take a defense until 2 defenses are off the board.
Yeah, pretty much it's a panic pick late. Yeah,
really?
You'll see defenses roll.
You didn't do that last season.
I jump.
Yeah, you did.
See, there's 2 ways to do it.
Because I'm looking at it right now.
For defenses, you either make sure you grab the first one.
But let's say
Seattle.
Let's say you got the choice to say this is the most ideal round to take a defense. What round is it? Give me a number.
Like 8. 8 for the top. But, I still think there's good stuff you could get at that spot.
I think probably 7 is reasonable, yeah.
Last season, our first defense taken by me was in the 7th round. I picked the Bears defense was the first one, and then 2 picks later, Mark, you took the second defense, which were the Seahawks.
Yep, and hey, look at me.
So 7th round was when we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 defenses go off the board.
Everybody's like, I gotta get defense.
And that's the defense. And the thing is, you can wait for things like that because, Seattle, Carolina, San Francisco, basically your top 6 or 7 defenses are gonna be pretty good, most likely. And so you can afford to wait a little bit. But the thing also is, and this is just different fantasy football strategies. It's do you kind of react to what people are doing, or do you ignore everyone and just
take best value on the board according to your plan?
Well, that, or even just I'm going to get the best player that I see at every position because I want the best. I want points from every single position. Because that's one way you could do it, where it's like I got 2 running backs, I got a wide receiver, a quarterback, a tight end. Hey, I don't care that it's round 5. I'm taking the best defense off the board.
I feel like a defense that's underrated on this list. They're ranked probably, 13th. Houston. Yep. They go out, they make the big splash in the draft.
I was not expecting you to say Houston.
They go out and make a big splash in the draft and take up...
Clowney's just going to sack everybody. So,
between Clowney and JJ...
Crank up those points right there. That's going to be insane.
You know what defense I thought you were going to say? They take so much pressure
off their secondary.
You know what defense I thought you were going to say, Dave?
What's that?
Number 19, Detroit.
Wow.
No.
No.
Because we're talk about the Rams. I mean, the Lions have a stout defensive line as well.
I don't care. They don't have a good secondary.
And they're in a passing division, so it's
that's
fun.
That's who you're going to face.
Let's put it NFC North versus NFC North for the Bear fans over there.
Oh, the Bears.
Bears. We fixed our defensive line in a single season.
Ask the question. Bears.
Who
the Bears.
is going to have a better fantasy
Bears.
season, Lions or Bears?
Bears.
Defensive-wise.
Bears.
Why? Give me a reason.
We fixed our entire defensive line in one season.
Yep.
Like, he just picked a thing. He's like, that one. We're just going to get 7 new people.
And I would not be surprised to have some surprise player, in the safety spot instead of Chris Conti.
But you still have
By the
Chris
end of the year,
Conti on the
maybe.
team.
Still starting.
It doesn't matter because, again,
Count
you
it, by
fix
the way.
defensive line.
Count
that
it.
gives your secondary a better chance to get the ball.
And Chris
it just
Conti's
fixes
flaws
things.
are not as noticeable back in the day when we had a good defense.
Count it. We got the Chris Conti reference in.
When a quarterback has 8 seconds because there's no pressure being applied, it's pretty easy to pick apart a secondary.
Especially when there's that giant hole because none of our linebackers knew that they needed to cover the middle of the field.
I'm sorry, Bostic just looking like a lost puppy out there. Somebody just bring him home, please.
Okay, last question I have about the defenses is new coach in Tampa Bay, defensive coach Lovie Smith.
Yeah.
What are you expecting? Do you think that the only reason they're ranked 11 is because of, they have Lovie Smith now. He was a defensive coach.
It helps, but again, they lost Revis. I mean, that hurts a lot in my mind.
That was going to be exciting to see with Lovie Smith. I think Tampa Bay, better than you think, but not as good as people are going to hope.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. You've got 2 times a year going against Drew Brees. That's going to hurt. Matt Ryan, that's going to hurt. Cam Newton to a lesser extent. I mean, because of Greg Olson's his only option, but it's still that's a lot. I don't like it. I think it's too high.
The team I'm excited, or the defense I'm excited about actually, because I think they're going to be one of those. It's round 12. I need somebody because everyone else off the board. Cleveland Browns.
Yeah.
They were good last year.
And
People are going to forget about it.
their secondary. I mean, Joe Hayden picks up a corner to go alongside him.
I was going to say they just added Gilbert.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting, and I think people are just going to think Cleveland Browns. I'm going to stay away from that.
The only thing I'm afraid of is Gilbert, him going for strips and just watching people walk past him. It's like Tillman syndrome. He goes for the ball, not the man, and sometimes it bites you in the ass.
Well, and the one defense, because you said I'm going to keep it in the AFC, I'm thinking AFC North is Baltimore, because they add their first-round pick, C.J. Mosley. How well is Matt Elam going to play? He had some issues last season where wide receivers got open because he wasn't playing the safety position right.
You guys might remember from last year, I was excited about the Pittsburgh Steelers in the AFC North. But this year, I got nothing really that good to say about the AFC North.
And Mark, you said it earlier, we're saving the best position for last, kickers.
Yeah, well, kickers are really important. I mean, you could take one in the 5th round if you're willing to go for that. Or you can do what I do every year, which is, the thing is, I remember a couple years ago, maybe I'm just imagining this, but ESPN let me not draft a kicker. They allowed me to not draft one, and I was excited about that, because why? Why do you need to draft a kicker? You can just wait. But then last year, they forced me to draft a kicker, and that upsets me. You don't draft a kicker until your very last pick. Is what I'm trying to say.
I think you can go a little bit earlier in the very last pick. But
those last picks, when you're like, you got nobody, you don't know who to go, just stack up on running backs. One of them might be decent. That's my thought. And if not, you drop them and you take 5 kickers. Who cares?
You take 5 kickers?
Because there's always serviceable kickers out there.
And they're all very close. I mean, but Phil Dawson's probably my favorite just because consistency. I mean, he had 7 straight weeks of double digits.
Yeah, but what about, you can go with I'm going to try to get Matt Prater just because he's got Peyton Manning.
Yeah, but I'm not going to be the guy who goes in the 6th round and drafts a kicker. I'm just not that guy.
You could be.
I don't know. With kickers, I try to get 2 every year, and it's because of my...
Where do you use these draft picks on?
Yeah,
you've got a quarterback you're going to take in.
No.
You're going to take a quarterback to ride the bench.
No.
I guarantee those 2 guys that you want, at least one of them was going to be not drafted.
I'm not saying I draft 2. I'm saying I target 2.
Oh, okay.
I either try to get Blair Walsh or Robbie Gould. Those are my 2, just because it's the kicker. Who the cares? And those are my favorite players.
There's a care.
I mean, there are certain teams where
you can go with the isn't it Greg Zuerlein? Is he the Russian in the Rams, or am I thinking of Hauschkis with Seattle?
Hauschkis with Seattle, but yeah.
See, the thing is, like, for these guys, you could go, Peyton Manning's going to throw a lot of touchdowns, Matt Prater. There's an explosive offense out there in the AFC North with Green Bay and Chicago. I'll grab their kickers.
Alex Henry with the Chip Kelly offense?
Yeah, I mean, there's things
definitely.
like you go with that, but you just got to think to yourself, okay, do I really need one of these guys right now? Because there's going to be kickers, and they're all going to get 3 or 4 points anyways.
You know what you do?
So who cares?
You're going to say, which team is going to be the worst in the red zone offensively? That's who you go with.
Let's see who doesn't have a 6'4" wide receiver or a running back that's about 250.
Yeah,
that's where you got to look.
Definitely. So I mean, and people can disagree, but I just think kickers. Why bother? Wait till the end and just take whoever, just look and go, all right, which one of these teams do I think is going to score some points not score points?
Take whoever's there.
Just make sure to check in on that because kickers get benched. I mean, they do.
Yeah.
It's a sad thing. Kickers are people too.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Hashtag kickers are people
Some
too.
kickers get injured on the very first play of the season, not the NFL season.
And like we said, if Dave said he's going to draft anybody, don't draft him because Nick
Sorry,
Novak.
Phil Dawson.
And you know what? I think that's a good point to find out Dave's guys to not pick when we talk about some sleepers.
Oh, jeez.
And what are we thinking?
Are we going to do sleepers now?
Early sleepers.
End it?
Why not? How many do you want to do? I mean, because you don't want to just list everybody. You want to save some stuff.
I don't know. You pick, Mark. You brought it up.
I'm gonna say the one guy that I said I was gonna say this earlier. When you're talking about Greg Olsen and how he's the only person there, I'm gonna give you somebody else in Carolina who I think is going to do a lot better than we expect, and that's Kelvin Benjamin. He's a big guy. He's the only big guy in that offense.
He's going to play.
I like it.
He's going to do well because who the hell else is Cam Newton going to throw to?
I really like it, most because I like Calvin Benjamin previously.
And he'll probably be taken in like the 13th, 14th round.
Yeah. My sleeper, probably running back, Bishop Sankey. I think it's a default pick almost. He was an absolute stud in college. He comes into Tennessee who desperately needs someone who can run the ball. Wow, that was hard to say. Run with the ball consistently. Coming off CJ Noke, I mean, it just makes sense.
Dave, I have 2 sleepers, and I'm going to match your rookie with Andre Williams, the rookie for the New York Giants, came out of BC. He's not a guy that I'm saying, start him. He's number one.
It is going to be the Giants Super Bowl
He's going to have some production. Also, I'm going to raise you by saying Toby Gernhardt in Jacksonville.
No, I don't believe that.
I don't know if he's gonna.
I know
possible sleeper was.
I know you got those Viking horns coming out of your head right now, but I don't.
Possible sleepers.
The only
what
reason
you said.
I kind of get Andre Williams is because Dave Wilson
he's gonna be third
is
string.
fumbleitis.
He's going to be third string.
The boy can't hold on to the ball, so kind of hard to argue there.
And the way Coughlin's already kind of
is Coughlin on the hot seat? Is that what you're saying? Because you're saying Super Bowl season.
No.
Yeah, I think he's got to be on the hot seat.
And
right?
they've already kind of came out and said that it's going to be Jennings and Williams being like a dual back, kind of splitting the load, and then David Wilson is going to be last.
Yep. And then one final fantasy football question, because if you're in one of those leagues, which coach do you draft?
Are there leagues that you have to draft a coach?
No, but I always want there to be one. I always, every year, ask that we should add the coach to draftable players.
If we have to, then I'm going to take...
Do coaches get points based off of challenge wins?
Yeah, they probably do.
I'm going to take...
Negative points off of losses.
I'm going to take Pete Carroll. Of course, Pete Carroll.
Pete Carroll's a solid choice. I'd say stay away from Lovie Smith. He sucks at the red flag.
At the end of the year, you should also get bonus points given to you in the playoffs based on how many of the draft picks have been decent.
Ooh,
I'm going to go with the
I'm
going to go with the Walrus in Kansas City.
Or you can do, of course, the other guy in the NFC North, the Harbaugh out there in the NFC
Harbaugh,
West.
You can't really lose.
Yeah, but in
Mark
the NFC West,
a good
because
choice.
They have so many draft picks that one of them is bound to be good.
Or you go with the living legend, Bill Belichick. Belichick.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of sound.
Who would you go with, Mark? Pick one.
If I had to pick somebody,
I picked Carroll.
You're gonna take my boy Pete Carroll. Well, I mean, you could ride the Coughlin train because he's on the hot seat and he's gonna win a Super Bowl.
He's due for it at that point. Yeah,
I think that's a.
Do
solid
you push the button and ride the Dennis Allen train?
No, you don't. No, you don't do that.
Okay, and I'm sorry. I'm looking at this list of running backs. All of a sudden it hit me. Is Ray Rice draftable early on, or do you think he's gonna fall so far that you can pick him up late?
this is the end for Ray Rice. I mean, the career is coming to an end. He's got some personal issues going on right now as well.
I wouldn't say the career is coming to the end, but yeah, I avoid him.
I mean, what's he been doing lately? He's getting older. He's getting to the magic age where running backs are useless. So, I mean, besides Frank Gore, who's barely putting it up still.
He's almost done, too.
Exactly. So, I mean, I'm not touching him.
Between Gore, Ray Rice, Steven Jackson, Chris Johnson, these are some aging running backs.
I take Gore out of those three if I have to. Out of those three.
I would probably wait super long and take Steven Jackson because
who else is going to take him? And Dave, I looked at your computer. Trent Richardson.
Yeah.
Bounce back year, fantasy-wise?
Probably not.
Because I drafted him in a different league, and he stunk. Of course, I didn't know he was going to get traded and then not used.
Well, not used is a rough term. It's called he couldn't figure out the playbook. So he sat on the sideline.
And to be fair, that offensive line is a joke. I mean, it's better, but it was a joke. He was not going to do anything out there.
Yeah, it's kind of disappointing that Indy gave up the first for him with such high hopes.
Well, they have high hopes for like 3 years from now when they fix that offensive line.
Yeah. Unless they take the Trustman approach and just wipe it all out in 1 year.
Well, that's going to do it here for our bonus podcast for our fantasy football lovers out there. Hit that subscribe button, that like button. Tell us down below what you think about any of the fantasy football rankings that we talked about today. And as always, have a good day, everybody.